The ocean was trying to kill them. Ice grinding like broken glass, wind slicing through wool and bone. And somehow Viking crews pushed their ships across frozen seas that should have stopped them cold. No engines, no satellites, just brains, nerve, and a deep understanding of how heat leaves water. That is not legend. That is applied survival science, centuries before modern navies ever wrote it down. Let's get straight to the good stuff. The truth about removing heat from the sea. Water freezes when it loses heat. Simple idea, brutal consequences. In the far north, heat escapes from the ocean into the air fast during winter. Cold winds strip warmth from the surface. Long dark nights stop the sun from putting energy back in. The top layer cools, gets denser, and ice begins to form. Vikings did not have thermometers, but they understood patterns. They knew when the sea would start locking up, not randomly, predictably. Certain bays, fjords and coastal shallows freeze first because shallow water loses heat faster than deep open ocean. Less volume, faster cooling, faster ice. They planned routes around this, or sometimes directly over it. Sea ice was not always an enemy. To us, frozen ocean sounds like a barrier. To them, it could be a bridge. When coastal waters froze solid enough, it created stable platforms for moving gear, scouting routes, and even hauling smaller vessels across short stretches. Risky? Yes. Impossible? No. New sea ice is thin and dark. Old ice turns thick, white and stronger. Vikings learned to read that difference with their eyes and feet. Snow on top insulated the ice, slowing further thickening. Clear, wind-blown ice grew thicker, faster, and safer. That knowledge meant life or death. They were not removing heat themselves in a magical way. Nature did the cooling. They understood the process and moved at the right time. Here is where it gets clever. Even in brutal winters, not all ocean freezes. Some areas stay open. These are called polynyas, patches of open water surrounded by ice. They form when wind pushes ice away from one area or when warmer water rises from below. Vikings learned where these open lanes tended to appear, near certain coasts, downwind of headlands, along currents that carried slightly warmer water. These became natural highways through otherwise frozen seas. Instead of smashing blindly into ice fields, they navigated from one open water zone to another, like stepping stones. That is advanced environmental reading, long before modern ice charts. Seawater does not freeze at the same temperature as fresh water. Salt lowers the freezing point. That means the ocean has to lose more heat before ice forms. Vikings did not know the chemistry, but they knew the behavior. They noticed that river mouths froze differently from the open sea. Fresh water on top from rivers could freeze faster, creating thin, deceptive ice. Dangerous. Offshore salty water stayed liquid longer. Safer for ships, at least early in winter. They adjusted routes based on this, hugging the right coasts at the right times, avoiding brackish traps where ice looked solid but was not. Wind was their refrigeration system. Wind is a heat thief. When strong cold winds blow across water, they speed up heat loss dramatically. More evaporation. more cooling, faster ice growth. Viking sailors tracked prevailing winter winds the way World War II pilots tracked jet streams. If winds had been blowing hard from the cold interior for days, they expected rapid ice expansion. If winds shifted or calmed, ice growth slowed. That meant timing departures carefully. If you leave too late, well, you get trapped. But if you leave just before the major freeze-up, you can slip through routes that will be sealed only weeks later. Their longships were not clumsy cargo tubs. They were flexible, shallow draft, and honestly pretty light for their size. That really mattered in icy waters. A shallow draft meant they could move through thin ice and slushy water where deeper ships would just get stuck. Flexible wooden hulls could survive minor ice pressure that would crack rigid vessels. Crews could even drag ships over ice or frozen shorelines when necessary. This was engineering matched to environment. Not by accident, by generations of trial, error and survival. Reading the colour and sound of the sea. Ice and water speak different languages. Dark water absorbs more heat and stays liquid longer. Lighter, dull surfaces often signal forming ice. Vikings watched colour shifts constantly. They also listened. Ice grinding, popping and groaning told them about movement and pressure. Quiet, still ice fields were more stable. Noisy zones meant shifting flows that could crush a ship. This was sensory navigation. No instruments, just trained human perception sharpened by necessity. This was not random luck by brave explorers. It was shared operational knowledge. Routes, seasonal timing, dangerous zones, safe harbours, all of it passed from crew to crew like strategic briefings before a World War II naval mission. Experience from one voyage shaped the next. Failures were remembered, and survivors taught younger sailors exactly when the sea gave up its heat and when it became a frozen battlefield. That collective memory was, their real technology. Why this still matters today. Modern Arctic operations use satellites, thermal imaging and ice forecasts. Yet the core principles are honestly the same ones Viking sailors worked out by observation. Heat loss drives ice, wind shapes openings, salinity changes freezing behaviour, geography controls risk. They were early masters of environmental warfare against cold, not by fighting nature, but by syncing with it. So no, they did not literally remove heat from the ocean with tools or fire pits or mythical tricks. The planet handled the cooling. Vikings mastered the timing, the patterns and the physics in action. That is what carried them across frozen seas that should have been impassable. And honestly, that mix of courage and cold hard science fits right at home on 0 Hour World War II. Different century, same mindset. Understand the environment. Adapt fast. Survive what should destroy you. If you want more deep dives where history meets real-world survival science, hit subscribe, share this with a fellow history fan, and stick with 0 Hour World War II. We are just getting warmed up.